and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, today hath decided they're pulling out. They're pulling out of the Commission on Presidential Debates. No more presidential debates. Because, look, they've been getting their hats handed to them for a while. Crying, whining, complaining. Oh, you're mean to us. Oh, you're bad to us. You ask us questions. You don't let us. The greatest debate ever. Really, honestly and truthfully, in Republican land, Sarah Palin and Joe Biden. Sarah Palin was quite prepared for a Republican-style debate. Yes, I know you're going to ask me questions, and yes, I know you're going to want me to answer those questions, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say whatever it is that I want to say, and I'm going, because I know the base just wants to hear my talking points. And she was, I gave her credit. I did. I gave her credit because she didn't know a lot, but she went out there prepared with, there you go again, Joe. She delivered her zingers. They at least got her prepared to at least do that and be able to have her media tested, focus group tested, think tank approved lines all ready to go, because that's all that matters. The sound bites, that's all that matters. The little talking points, the focus group stuff, that's what matters. We don't have the Lincoln Douglas debates where you have any real substance, where you're not really actually debating. It's who gets the best sound bite the next morning. And look, do I care now if they're pulling out of these debates? Not really, because honestly, did anything really come of them? Now, I love a good debate. I love a good knockdown, drag out, go back and forth kind of thing. Would love to see that again. But they were unhappy. There were rules. Now they say they're going to go find a newer, better debate platform, which again is fake news. It's OAN. It's their dominant media structure. And if you had that, you might do it too. I've been expecting this. Not a surprise. So here we are. Now, also not a surprise. Also not surprising. The party that loves oaths. Yes, they have an oath. Yes. And this oath is, any presidential primary candidate who does not agree in writing or who participates in any debate that is not sanctioned shall not be eligible to participate in any further sanctioned debates, according to the Republican Party resolution. And it was passed unanimously by the faithful. So do what we say, when we say, how we say, or you won't get to play with our ball because we're pulling out. Yeah. And again, oddly enough, I don't actually care. Because the weird thing is, it's going to be a train wreck. Now, we've got the upcoming elections that should be fun and entertaining and interesting and idea-wise, making our lives better, not a lot of substance. Where they're running on what they've always run on, fear, smear, division, hatred, that kind of stuff. And we're seeing it in state houses across the country. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the program. But this is the platform. Now, remember, back in 2020, the Republican Party didn't have a platform. And this is the weird moment because, yesterday on the program, we had Joe Walsh on, and Joe made the assertion, and I halfway agreed with him, that Democrats haven't really been able to talk with working class people. They haven't been the ones to roll up their sleeves and talk with folks. And, someone during the show called in during one of the breaks and said, hey, why is that? Why, Democrats are smarter. Democrats have, better policies. Why can't they articulate that? And that is a really good question, because I know some really bright people who have really great ideas and have come up with, incredible ways to make people's lives better, but are horrible at explaining it to you. Because when they start to talk, they put you right to sleep. I mean, it's a snore fest. The one thing Republicans do really well, I mean, they do it amazing because, again, they've got the focus groups, they've got the think tanks, they spend a lot of time, energy, money. They got a lot of people from, Madison Avenue doing PR. They spend a lot of time on packaging. They spend a lot of time on getting in your eyeballs, not a lot on substance. They know substance doesn't matter. It's all about getting in front of your eyeballs. It's all about grabbing your attention. Outrage. It's about feeding the outrage candy. It's about getting the chaos merchants to shove that stuff down your throat so that you're constantly in a state of anger. So you're not actually thinking that they're not doing anything, but you think they are. Hey, they're fighting for me. I don't know what they're fighting for. I don't know how it's going to help me. But you think on some level, take the theory, that theory that they were talking about in Virginia, that theory, something about race, something about it being critical. I've yet to have one of those people who thought that's the most important issue. Most important issue, Rick. I've yet to have someone really explain it to me. And to be able to go, this is how it's affected my child. I've yet to have that. I had a lot of people who believe, a lot of believers. Oh my gosh, they're teaching our children. There are books. Books, yeah, books. There are books. Did anyone read the books? No. No. Silly person. But we believed, and they shoved it down their throats, didn't they? It was everywhere. The right-wing media just kept hammering it. And it wasn't any substance. But boy, they got us all in a tizzy. And this is where, the right does so much better. Now, you listen to Democrats when they talk about, hey, we need to rebuild infrastructure. We need, spending for education and healthcare and all kinds of stuff. And here's how, we're going to have, this spending is going to have a reverberation effect in this sector, and it's going to bring this. And it starts getting into the weeds. And again, we're not weedy kind of thinkers. We're busy. And a good majority of us, especially if you're on the political right, you do your research while your mouth's gaping open on the can, while flipping through Facebook, and that's the extent of it. If it's not in a little cute little meme or in a 20-second video, a little too deep. And this is part of the problem that Democrats have. They don't do bumper sticker sloganeering. For instance, this inflation thing. This inflation thing is hard to grab your head around. And, I threw out today that there's a report out by the Federal Reserve. They just reported that corporate profits are up across the board, 25%. All these companies are doing wildly well. The oil companies are doing wildly well. Talked about Cargill doing well. They've got 3 new billionaires. How could they not be doing wildly well? And yet we've got inflation, at a 40-year high, corporate profits at a 50-year high. Is there some correlation, possibly, that while corporate America is, doing really, really well, that maybe some of that offset, some of it, possibly? And I had Andy Puzder. That name may sound familiar to you because he was suggested as one of Trump's labor secretaries. He was the former CEO of Carl's Jr., he got shot right down as labor secretary because he would have been a terrible labor secretary. I was against him, worked very hard to make sure that he didn't get the gig. But he chimed in on one of my tweets saying that profits are up because of demand. It's all on the demand side without taking, and this is where the right does this so much better. It's all Joe Biden's fault. Oh, Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave everybody money. And it's all because Joe Biden spent so much money that it caused all this inflation. And that's simple. People go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Joe Biden spent all this money. And that's all other. Now, oddly enough, when Trump gave away $2 trillion to the very wealthy, well, that kind of juicing the economy didn't. Well, that's different. We gave that $2 trillion away to rich people, and they know what to do with it. They hoard it. Interesting. His example was, even if these companies were to sell their product at below market price, somebody would buy it and they'd resell it. And my first thought is, okay, I don't remember the last time someone went to the gas station and came knocking on my door going, Rick, I've got this gas. You want to buy it at 50 cents more? That doesn't happen. In fact, the gas station has been gouging me for months now. Because you remember we had that spike in per barrel. It's now not spiking per barrel, and yet oddly enough hasn't come down that much. Gee, I wonder why. Now remember that phone call where they said, no, we're not going to increase production. We want production where it's at. Because we want the price high. We want to bring more money and we want to return some to our shareholders. We need to make up some of the money. And you go, but hold on. This is where Puzder's simplistic view kind of breaks down. And this is where my argument is. You got good old-fashioned greedy corporate America going, hey, we can play with that supply and demand thing by just not supplying enough to meet the demand. Thus, fiddling with the supply and demand curve. Yeah, people have got some money. And oh, by the way, more people are taking out debt to meet their demand. Because remember, we were tucked away for about 2 years. People want some stuff. People a little pent up. Sorry, that $1,400 that we got from Biden, no, that's not what caused this. I'm not buying that. I think 2 years of being pent up, people getting back to their lives, and a supply chain that's broken, and corporate America going, hey, good opportunity to not do so much work, limit the amount of supply in the market there, cause prices to go up. We can make more profit off of doing less work. Sounds like a good American solution. But his idea, simplistic, fits on a bumper sticker. Biden juiced demand. Biden did it. And look, you can actually get a sticker. Yeah, you can get a sticker with Biden pointing at something going, I did that. Yes, I did. And the jingoists and the dimwits, they go around and they slap, look what I did. Without thinking, no, this is corporate America basically robbing you blind. And the reality is only a fool or a liar would not make the connection that corporate profits at a 50-year high, inflation at a 40-year high. There is a connection there, folks. And now you go, but how do we fix that? Well, I argue, and this is what I said from the beginning when we were talking about the oil prices, when Russia started in Ukraine, I said what the president should have done, should have said we're going to suspend all gas taxes, all federal gas taxes, all gone. And to make up the difference of the cash, we're going to do a windfall profit tax on all oil companies. Sorry, oil companies, you're now during this moment of crisis because the globe is in crisis. You're going to have to tighten the belt along with the rest of us. You're going to be able to operate at cost plus, and we'll come up with a number, 3-4%. Everything above that we're taxing, and we're going to make sure that we can fund all of the things we need. Because look, we've been giving away too much for too long. In fact, if you saw the ProPublica piece yesterday, we've been giving the billionaire class way too much. In fact, they pointed out, according to tax records from 2014 to 2018, our top 25 billionaires pocketed somewhere around $401 billion and yet paid just $13.6 billion in taxes. For those who don't do math as well, and I'm one who, well, doesn't, that's a tax rate of 3.4%. You, me, the rest of us, we pay much, much higher than that. Can I say we pay much higher than that? In fact, the average working person, if you're making about 45 grand, the average tax rate for a single working person, about 21%. So our top 25 billionaires, the rarefied air, way, way up at the tippy top of the 0.0001%, paying 3.4%. How does that happen? Well, it happens a couple of ways. One, they don't get taxed like we do, because we get taxed on earnings every dime, every Friday, every 2 weeks, however you get paid. And, they make huge charitable contributions that they get to write off. And interestingly enough, lots of power come with those charitable contributions. Normally their own foundations that employ their own families and their own legacy, and really quite interesting how they do that. And I've said for a very long time, we need to go back to a good socialist president. Need to go back and dig up the policies of a good socialist president like Ike. Go back and get Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code and dust that baby off and go, what did socialist Ike do? Now, obviously, I'm being facetious. Ike was not a socialist by any stretch of the imagination. But in today's world, oh boy, a top marginal tax rate of 92%. You want to hear people squeal? You want to hear our billionaire class? Oh boy, when they're used to paying 3.4%. Look what they did when Biden said we need a 20% minimum tax. They went after Joe Manchin and sent him just crazy. I'll tell you, we had better figure out how you, me, the rest of us come together and fight on the right side of things, instead of all this nonsense over who loves who or which bathroom is going to where or all the rest of the nonsense. I'm telling you, divide and conquer, and they are winning. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Big fan of Michigan Representative Andy Levin. Andy and others today came out with a bipartisan guaranteed overtime for truckers act. They're calling it the GOT Act. I've been saying, you need something like this for years. The idea that truck drivers only get paid when the wheels are turning is an abomination, and it's unsafe. There are stories and that litter the the news yearly of people who they're behind on their time and they're doing all kinds of things to try and make up time, driving in erratic, unsafe manners, running multiple logbooks, all kinds of stuff from the past that this would solve. More importantly, this would make dispatchers respect drivers' time. For those who don't know, most truck drivers spend, hours sitting waiting for loads. And that's, you ask any truck driver, that's the most frustrating part. Dealing with traffic, dealing with, idiot four-wheelers, cutting them off, and that's part of the gig. But when you get to a warehouse or you get to a port or you get to a dock and you've got to sit there for 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 hours, days. And sorry, you're not getting paid for that. That's where the craziness steps in. And look, dispatchers have no incentive, and these companies have no incentive to care. That's on your dime. It's not our problem. They've shifted that burden because most truck drivers, unfortunately, for our industry since deregulation, most truck drivers are their own boss. They're shouldering the burden. That has been heaped onto them. And this is one of those things that I've often said, one of those carve-outs in the law, in the Fair Labor Standards Act that, that should have not been allowed. Because you can work, 70 hours in a week. Well, now with the restart, upwards of 84 hours in 8 days and no overtime. And in fact, there are some that I've seen, some like the port drivers, for instance. There was a guy who showed me, he made less than minimum wage for an 84-hour work week. And you go, well, how's that possible? Well, a lot of waiting time, a lot of time where you're waiting to get loaded, unloaded, and then they fine you for different things. It's all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on in the trucking industry. That has to stop. Now, me as a union supporter, I've always been of the mindset, well, if you're dumb enough to allow yourself to get stuck in those positions, shame on you. Again, this kind of, you shouldn't be stupid to get sucked into these deals. But the sad reality is the mass of the industry is there, and this has got to be a moment where we start pulling people back from it because it's too far gone at this moment. It really is too far gone in a lot of places, and legislation is what's going to have to bring it back. And looking at the hours of service, looking at overtime as being part of this, I think this is a good thing. Now, it's got wide support. The Owner-Operators Association, they're behind it. A number of safe trucking organizations are behind it. But me, as a union guy, I'm going, this is why you join a union. Because, well, this is what unions do. They make conditions better. And I'm not sure where the Teamsters Union comes down on this. I'm not sure where other trucking unions are in this. But I'll tell you where my mindset is in the moment. As bad as these conditions are, this is why you organize people. And sadly, in the trucking industry, they've allowed themselves, and look, drivers have done it to themselves. It's the ultimate independent. I've got my freedom. Now, granted, I've got my freedom, and we're all on computers that are following us, within inches on the road, and dispatchers know where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and all that. But we're free, being tracked at every moment. In some cases, cameras on both sides of the glass, but free. And not getting paid. So next week, we're going to try and get Andy Levin to come on the program and share some thoughts on how this would work, because I think it's important. I think it's important that people get compensated for their time, and they're saying that this might help with what they're calling a trucker shortage. And look, if you make the industry better, you make it like it was when I first started, you're going to get people to come in. I truly believe that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a second. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day union representatives at Bunker Hill Mining Company in Kellogg, Idaho, were notified of a policy change. the lead and zinc producer had decided to exclude fertile women from working in lead-exposed environments. Women workers had to provide a doctor's note stating they were infertile, postmenopausal, or had been sterilized. Otherwise, they would be transferred to safer departments at a substantial loss in pay. 29 women took the transfer, while at least 3 opted for sterilization. During World War II, companies like Bunker Hill promised millions of women workers that they would eliminate hazards through engineering controls. In the 1970s, a new wave of women gained work in several industries that used occupational safety language to implement exclusionary policies like the one at Bunker Hill. These took the form of outright bans on hiring of women, either altogether or in many departments considered too toxic for women of childbearing years. It meant the real loss of well over 100,000 potential industrial jobs for women. Employers could have provided actual protection through better medical coverage and benefits, installation of engineering controls, or protections to include men's reproductive health. Instead, these policies served to roll back economic and civil rights of women workers, regardless of whether they were mothers or ever planned to be. The women appealed to their union, state and federal commissions, and OSHA, but faced an uphill battle. OSHA initially fined Bunker Hill for outstanding violations and its sterilization policy, but dropped the case once Ronald Reagan took office. The women eventually won wage equivalency in their new jobs, but women working in heavy industry would continue to battle such policies for more than a decade. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. And right there's the problem with the big money establishment that now controls the National Democratic Party. This group certainly wants Democrats to be the majority party, but for what purpose? Based on the policies they actually push, they seek progress without change, only offering policy tweaks that conform to the existing corporate structure. Their idea of change is what near beer is to beer, only not so satisfying. Worse, when grassroots progressives put real FDR-style Big D Democratic ideas on the national agenda, the Dem hierarchy turns into a bunch of fraidy-cat Democrats, muling that a living wage law, health care for all, breaking up monopoly power, child care, strengthening unions, and other fundamental changes are too extreme. Such boldness, they cry, will frighten voters. They are, of course, wrong and politically inept. For such direct benefit, we're on your side changes in today's corporate-run system are the Democrats' most popular proposals. Polls confirm that this is especially true among working-class voters in manufacturing towns where Democrats have been getting creamed. Surveys by a group called American Family Voices show that these people don't think the party is too socialist or too woke, but too meek, too corporate, and missing in action. After all, they've seen CEOs move their decent-paying jobs out. They've watched monopolies and Wall Street squeeze the lifeblood out of family farm opportunities. They've witnessed Amazon and Walmart eating Main Street alive. Where, they ask, is the Democratic Party that once stood for us? These people actually despise big corporations, love unions, and yearn for a party that'll join them in battling the bastards. This is Jim Hightower saying, the question they have for Democrats is basic. Do you just intend to hold office or use it?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been saving this crazy Oklahoma story for the last couple of days because it's Oklahoma, and there's only one person I know from Oklahoma, and I go, I gotta get an Oklahoman's view of just how crazy Oklahoma is going to be, because evidently the legislature recently passed, and the governor Kevin Stitt signed what is basically a total outright abortion ban. They did pass something with the exemption of something that would save the life of a mother, but no rape or incest. So if you get raped and you get pregnant in Oklahoma, no, you're going to have to give birth. If incest, you're going to have. It used to be rape, incest in life. That used to be, not anymore. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall. I'm waiting for them to go full too bad. Here to share some thoughts on just how crazy the state of Oklahoma is turning, and well, a whole bunch of other states now, because there are a bunch of states who believe that women have the right to choose not to live in their state. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burst to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking some time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. So, Oklahoma, your home state.
I apologize on behalf of my state for the horror that we've wrought upon this country, the sadness that is my state. But you're right. There used to be the exception for rape, incest, and the life and health of the mother. Now it sort of feels like Republicans think that if you're raped, then it's your fault.
Yeah,
which I feel like has kind of been the narrative for a long time. Like it's, oh, well, maybe her skirt was too short. Maybe she was wearing the wrong thing. She was asking for it. Like all of these sort of narratives, it's the same kind of thing where, it's trying to figure out how to blame the victim. And maybe that's where Oklahoma and where the Republican Party has gone now, is that, forced birth is now become a punishment.
Yeah, who was that guy? It was somewhere in Missouri, if I remember right, who said you can't get pregnant if you get raped.
Todd Aiken.
That's who it was.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going.
Your body just shuts that whole thing down.
It shuts the whole thing down. And look, these are people who don't believe in science, so they may think that works.
Yeah, and what's interesting, there was in 2004 the first congressional campaign that I ever worked on. I was a fundraiser, and we were running against the Republican Olympic miler, Jim Ryan. You remember that guy?
I do.
He fell in one of the Olympics, and then the next one he came back and he medaled and set a record and all this other stuff. He used to say that women should be forced to carry the child in the case of rape or incest because it helps her heal. And it's just like,
exactly how?
That guy.
Exactly how?
Yeah. Right. And clearly this is the kind of person that you want to be listening to whenever it comes to anything regarding women's health, right?
So let me if I'm getting this logic straight, if he woke up every day and I was standing at the side of his bed and he got out of bed and I tripped him every day, would that help him heal from his Olympic trip? It seems logical. Yeah. He'd get over that, wouldn't he?
I don't know, but I would pay for that to happen.
Now, the governor there in Oklahoma said, as governor, he represents 4 million Oklahomans, evidently not you. He says they overwhelmingly support protecting life in the state of Oklahoma. We want Oklahoma to be the most pro-life state in the country. He said we want to outlaw abortion in the state of Oklahoma. He goes on to say that it's going to be challenged by some liberal activist outside the state from some coast, but the people in the good state Oklahoma, that's what they want.
It's funny because he talks so much about this idea of life when Oklahoma is one of the worst states in the country to give birth in. There are so few hospitals in rural Oklahoma that there are some people where you have to actually drive to Texas to access a hospital. That happened with my cousin after she had gastric bypass and she had like an emergency infection, had to drive all the way to Texas to be treated. And, there are stories about women who, if they go into labor and they have to drive for 45 minutes to get to a hospital. So I just keep thinking of like Seth Meyers and the Lobby Baby and, how they basically just barely got to the hospital from, when they were in the Uber, and the second baby, they actually did have it in the lobby of his apartment. So, it may just be that in Oklahoma, they only care about the fetus. They don't actually care about women who are giving birth and the children.
Yeah, well, in the old days, women didn't go to the hospital. They just out in the field doing whatever it is they do in the field, and
pop a squat and push the kid out, go back to what they were doing.
Yep, and the kid could
My
help.
grandfather was born at home. He was born in a house with a dirt floor in Medicine Park, Oklahoma. So 2 generations ago, that was my family, which just blows my mind.
Well, it wasn't all that long ago that's how it was done. I mean, as my wife is feverishly writing on the board, all of her uncles were born at home. So, well, it's an interesting time. Let's move on. I wanted to get your thoughts on evidently in Russia, their activist was arrested handing out books. Evidently, Orwell's 1984 is on the banned list. And as I was reading the story that you'd put out, my mind is going to this place where, hey,
Yep.
when are we going to start doing that?
And we already are. I mean, that's the thing. 1984 is already on the ban list for a lot of school districts. There is now, I guess there was this guy who wrote the book, It's Okay to Be a Unicorn. And he was banned from coming to a school because one parent took issue with the book. One parent thought that it was going to be a gay book because it had a unicorn.
Because it had a horn?
I guess, like, I think what he was basically saying is, if you're a horse and you're a unicorn, they're different and it's okay to be different, basically, is what, the story was about. But they didn't. One parent took issue with him coming to read it to the children.
Well, who wrote it? I mean,
no, I can't remember the guy's name.
Was it one of the Queer Eye guys?
No. He also wrote another one that's kind of similar, where it's just like, the it's basically the Starbelly Sneetches, but better, sillier graphics, more modern, rainbow unicorns, sparkles.
But that's what it was. It was sparkles. It was rainbows. That's what you just completely lost people. Completely lost people.
God forbid you have some rainbow sparkles or anything. Like, I don't know. Every girl that I know that is under the age of 14 is all about sparkles and rainbows and unicorns. And as a matter of fact, I told my mother that we were going to have a bunch of rainbows at my birthday party because when I was born, that's how my bedroom looked. So, when I came out as bisexual when I was 16, then I just blamed it on the rainbows. There you
go. Jason Tharp, I guess his name is. That's
yes.
I guess that's the name of the author. I did not know. Let's move along. Let's bang through some states. Virginia, you wrote about what's going on in Virginia. They got a crazy governor who evidently went on a veto spree. Anything with a Democrat's name on it, vetoed. I guess that's an interesting policy, right?
And what's crazy is a lot of these bills were bipartisan bills. They had enormous support. They were pretty, simple, easy things that people could agree on. Just things like they're mandating that big semi trucks don't put their cruise control on when it's snowing when they're in Virginia, right?
Yeah, but why do you need a law for that? That's a common sense thing.
Right, you would think.
No truck driver who knows anything does that.
Right?
Why do you need a law for that?
We have a lot of crazy, as you know, we've had a lot of crazy truckers driving around the DC metro area. And I think that big, huge snow that we had with all of those accidents on the highway, I don't know that was due to that, but I don't know. Theoretically, it should be something everybody knows, but in Virginia, they had to write a law about it.
This is one of those things, and maybe I got to think about this. Maybe I would have vetoed this myself, because I think this is the stuff that drives people crazy. This is common sense. This is one of those things where if you have your cruise control on in a snowstorm, someone should pull you over and smack you, not give you a ticket.
Well, now they can pull you over and smack you. Okay. Well, probably not smack you. I mean, I guess they could if you're black. But
no, that's shooting you. That's different.
Yeah, that's what they do in Virginia. They hit you with a brick. But yeah, they're and the other crazy law that I wrote about was Virginia is one of the many states that offers compensation to somebody who's been wrongfully convicted and wrongfully imprisoned.
Right.
So that was the case that happened to a guy who was in prison for 20 years, and the state, there was a lawsuit. The courts agreed to give him restitution for it. The state agreed on the amount. And basically, the lawmaker, I was a delegate who just did the the accounting bill for it that said, we authorize this to come out of the general fund for this dude. And Governor Youngkin basically wants to veto it and make it $1 less than what they negotiated. And I mean, you're just like, at this point, this isn't about vetoes. This is just straight up politics and you being cantankerous. And like, what's the point of that?
So how much did it cost to save that $1?
Right? I mean, how much will it cost? This is going to have to, go back they're going to have a bunch of override votes, I think, because there are a bunch of laws that both parties do agree on.
Wow.
And
crazy.
If it ends up being like a ton of laws that they override, like he's going to look really, really bad.
Well, let's hope that happens.
I'm all for it.
Let's hope that happens, because he's an ideologue who he shouldn't have won to begin with. Outside of the fact that the Republicans ran a good campaign of scaring people with that theory about race that's critical, and the Dems ran a crummy candidate. So there is that. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris, reporter from Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website if you want to check out the incredible work she's doing. In fact, we're going to continue traveling around the country with stories that she's written. Let's go to Ohio, crazy Ohio right now. J.D. Vance, it looks like he may get the coveted endorsement of the former guy. It looks like that might happen.
Yeah, that's what sources close to Trump are saying, that he's the guy. And a lot of folks have been lobbying on behalf of Josh Mandel, including our crazy Thai boycotter and jacket boycotter, Jim Jordan, who has been like really pushing Mandel on Trump. But I guess Donald Trump Jr. became friends with J.D. Vance, and that was all she wrote. So I think Vance came out with a new poll from his internal people that showed him dead even with the other two candidates, Gibbons and Mandel, and which does not match any other polls. So, I mean, this has got to be a hefty margin of error, right? Like plus or minus 7. I don't know. But
so you just make stuff up.
That was basically enough for Trump to decide, oh, okay, he's viable, then I'm going to go with him. So this will be a really interesting test to see if Trump's endorsement is enough to flip this race, because it's if it's dead even, or if he's down a couple of points, then we'll see. Gibbons' poll, he actually pushed out some of his own internal polling stuff that said the more that people learn about J.D. Vance, the more his poll numbers go down. So the more his familiarity, the more people hear about his name and everything, that's whenever name recognition goes up and approval goes down. So
yeah, at this point, I don't know which one's worse. I mean, they're all bad.
I know. They really are. They all are all bad. And what's funny about Vance is that he basically spent 2016 trash talking Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is Trump just, I guess, over the head and completely forgot about it, or maybe he doesn't know how to use the Google machine. But this is where we are now.
Yeah, and speaking of Trump, let's move over to Pennsylvania. It looks like he's made an endorsement in Pennsylvania. Nobody happy about him endorsing Dr. Quack. I mean Dr. Oz. In fact, most of the people I know are like, Dr. Oz, really? And when you go, really, Quack TV doctor, ratings kind of thing, yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, what's really important to Trump? TV ratings. Makes perfect sense.
That's exactly what he told Sean Hannity is, well, when his show was on, he got really good ratings. So that means he's going to get elected and he's going to win. And it's like, oh, honey, if that's really how that works, then the world would be a different place. But, like we would have Big Bird, leading the Senate, which would be awesome.
Well, I think we're going to get Herschel Walker in the Senate. The guy who, if you saw the Howard Stern clip of, I played Russian roulette because it's competition. I'm going, no, you dimwit. That's not competition. That's just, you were lucky.
6 times.
You go, you were just lucky. That's not competing. I think you need to get a dictionary that has like pages and words. You need to watch the Gene Simmons thing from the British TV bit. I'll find out what a dictionary is, look up the pages, find the words. It's in alphabetical order. Maybe somebody can help you with that.
Here's the thing about Herschel Walker is the guy's been hit in the head a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, like we've talked about how I donated my grandfather's brain to Boston University because they do the CTE study, the traumatic brain injury research on football players and boxers and, you know, people who've had traumatic brain injuries. And Papa was like really into, he played football when there were the leather helmets and he was Golden Gloves and all of that stuff. So I've learned just a ridiculous amount about traumatic brain injuries. And a lot of the things that Herschel Walker has exhibited over the last 10 years or so kind of sounds a little bit like maybe he's been hit in the head too many times. He's got mood swings. He's got, you know, acts of violence that he's done. He has no memory. Like he's already telling people that he owns a company he doesn't own and people who work for him who don't work for him. You know, he's claiming he has a personality disorder. And so there's just a lot going on that I think, you know, if I was running that race, I feel like somebody is taking advantage of him. There's somebody out there who's just using him to get an R on a ticket that could beat Warnock. But I don't know if you noticed, but Raphael Warnock raised like $24 million in 3 months.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of conversation, I think, about Herschel Walker's, you know, playing Russian roulette 6 times.
He was competing. He was just competing. And finally, let's go to Texas.
Why? Don't go to Texas.
Are you following why isn't the trucker convoy in Texas, where truckers are really being abused by an oppressive government? I mean, really, this should be right up the trucker convoy alley. This should be right at the top of their grievance. Every truck driver I've ever met, me included, hates going through the chicken coops, hates being harassed by local cops, hates going through inspection after inspection after inspection, hates it. Yet not a peep from those convoy folkers.
Yeah. And it's really sad too, because it's impacting people not just in Texas but regionally. Like this is a huge number of amount of produce and stuff that we actually, you know, use daily. And so like that's getting stopped at the border, and it's, you know, one thing to have a $5 avocado. It's another thing when it's like, I mean, you're seriously causing commerce issues, which is hurting jobs, which is, I mean, it's a lot of a spiral effect that's impacting not just Texas, but everybody else. And so,
yeah, but that's a win for them, because we're going to blame Joe Biden for it. You know, right? The $6 for strawberries I spent today, Joe Biden's fault. I'm waiting for some idiot to slap a picture on of Joe Biden posting, I did this. No. Texas did this. This is where the strawberries came from.
And it's berries are the number one import from south of the border. Fun fact, I read all about the imports. And so berries and broccoli. And, you know, like, again, I think this gives Democrats and Joe Biden a weapon where, you know, every time, you're exactly right, where everybody says, I don't want to spend $6 on my strawberries, and be like, well, blame that guy.
Yeah, I don't care about broccoli. That's the only thing I agreed with George H.W. Bush about. No broccoli. And finally, since we're talking about Abbott in Texas, he sent up a busload of migrants to be dropped off. Mm-hmm. And they actually dropped them off, I guess, in front of the F Channel building.
Yeah, which is sad, because the whole report that the F Channel did about it was, they dropped them off just blocks from the Capitol. And it's like, no, you idiot. They didn't drop them off at the Capitol. They dropped them off at the Fox headquarters, where there are photographers waiting. And the second they pulled up, they published a story about it. So this whole thing, like, very clearly was coordinated by Greg Abbott and the good people over at the Fox network. And there were some interviews with some of the people who were coming off the bus, and it sort of seems like they didn't really know what was going on, or where they were going, or where they were being taken. Because there was one guy who was like, yeah, I'm trying to get down to Florida. So clearly his plan was not to go from Texas to Washington. So that starts this conversation about, did these people get kidnapped by the state of Texas and taken across state lines? Because I would love to see that lawsuit. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. But hey, like you said, it's a good stunt, and it is what they did. Let's see if we could take a quick call. We've got Blake. I can't read what you've written. Blake from Minnesota on line 1. Blake, what's on your mind, buddy?
Yeah, you were talking about Oklahoma stuff, and since there's so much land that is under control of various tribal nations, I just learned that, like, their health clinics, because there's some federal money going to them, that they couldn't do this. But is there any reason why they couldn't, on their own, build, like, women's health service clinics and provide abortions in all these different states that are cranking down on the laws for that stuff?
It's a good question. What do you think, Sarah?
So this is actually something I've wondered about with relation to marijuana laws, because I always wondered if the tribes could basically grow their own marijuana outside of state laws. And so federally, I think, honestly, because like with pot laws, you can't because it's federally, illegal. But when it comes to abortion, I don't see why you couldn't do the native health clinics basically doing abortions on native land. I actually have a friend who's a tribal lawyer that I'm totally gonna reach out to her and ask that question and see what they think, because that may be the next step for Oklahoma and for other states.
Good question, Blake. Appreciate it. Anything else for Sarah?
Yeah. Not right now. No, thanks.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the call, buddy.
Segment there.
No, that's a good point. And next week when you come back and you share some thoughts on it, maybe you'll have a report.
Definitely, yeah.
Good stuff. All righty. Sarah, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. I'll look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out the incredible work that she does over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out the incredible work she does. And she does some of my favorite reporting out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, if there are any stories. But I look at this Abbott thing and the bus stunt, really, really quite amazing in that, the F channel didn't bother to mention that they dropped them right there. And we talked about this yesterday, real quick, that it was a stunt. It was only a handful of people, and they were actual volunteers. And I said, look, if I'm one of those people, I'm probably going to take that trip so I can get further away from Texas. I'm probably going to want to get farther away, probably going to want to get to D.C. I'm probably going to want to get, somewhere where there might be better services. For them, it's, you're probably going to know you're going to get exploited. You probably know you're going to get photographed. You probably know you're going to, be in a spot. But you're probably gonna get better served, and for them it's kind of a win. But for Abbott, it was that stunt, and you think of all the money. We talked yesterday with Rick Levy, the president of the Texas AFL-CIO. He has spent $4 billion on nonsense. And it must be nice to have the best healthcare system, the best roads, the best bridges, the best everything. It must be amazing that they've got the best state in the country. It just must be amazing because they can just piss away that kind of money. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of the program thus far, grab the podcast wherever you grab your podcast, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
I got nowhere to go now. I got no house. I got no nothing.
Catastrophic rains and floods kill hundreds in South Africa. I'm here today because homegrown biofuels have a role to play right now.
Biden waives summer ban on ethanol to combat high gas prices. Plus, the climate crisis is supercharging hurricane rainfall.
All of those super stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You will never hear a Republican who complains about how much we have to pay for gasoline ever complain about Jared Kushner getting $2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's because they don't actually care about gas prices, and they're jealous of Jared. Now, what was that whole thing about $10,000 and Hunter Biden again? This is your Green News Report.
$2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Desi Doyen, the climate crisis devastation continues, doesn't it?
Yes, unfortunately it does. Rescue and evacuation operations are underway in Durban, South Africa, after days of torrential rains and floods washed away roads and bridges and destroyed homes and vital infrastructure, killing at least 300 people. Oh. This latest weather disaster comes not long after other parts of southern Africa were devastated by 5 powerful tropical storms in just 6 weeks earlier this year. In a new study out this week, scientists from the World Weather Attribution Project, which analyzes the influence of climate change on extreme weather events, confirmed that climate change made those storms more intense and damaging.
Gosh, I wish we had more studies on all of this.
Climate change also made the record-breaking 2020 Atlantic hurricane season even worse. A new study in Nature Communications finds clear evidence that ocean warming is driving Atlantic hurricanes to produce more rainfall and to become more intense. This was the first study to look at an entire hurricane season rather than just single storms. The researchers found that during the entire record season of 30 named storms, human-caused global warming supercharged hourly rainfall rates in tropical storms and hurricanes by as much as 11%. One researcher warned, quote, "This isn't an end-of-the-century thing that we have to worry about. We actually have to prepare our coastlines for the changes in these storms now."
What, because climate change is happening right now?
Yes, that's exactly what he means. In other news, the spike in U.S. gasoline prices and other fossil fuel commodities, caused in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, are a key reason that domestic inflation is rising. To help lower gas prices, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency this week issued a temporary waiver to the Clean Air Act to allow gasoline known as E15, which is blended with 15% ethanol made from corn, to be sold in summer months to increase supply. The administration estimates that will bring down gas prices by about 10 cents per gallon where it is sold. Here's President Biden at an ethanol plant in Iowa.
Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide half a world away.
Now, it's a win for farm state lawmakers, but the temporary waiver is controversial because burning E15 gas in summer months increases polluting smog, and it could encourage more fossil fuel consumption.
You know what else would help?
What?
Don't we have war profiteering laws on the books anymore? Sure would like to see some of those brought against big oil.
Well, high gas prices have political impacts for congressional Democrats who warn that if Republicans win control of Congress in the November midterm elections, that will effectively mean the end of U.S. climate policy.
Yeah, and maybe the end of democracy, but that's a whole different story.
Another major energy company is moving to exit Russia to stop funding the war on Ukraine.
Rexit?
Bloomberg News reports that Vitol Group, the world's largest independent oil trader, will stop trading Russian crude oil and products as its existing contracts expire by the end of this year and will not enter into any new transactions with Russia.
Good.
Some good news. Japanese car maker Honda announced this week it will try to catch up to other global car makers by pouring $40 billion into electrifying its lineup with the target of launching 30 EV models globally by 2030. And And finally, the U.S. has hit a wind energy milestone. In the first week of April, wind power was the second largest source of electricity in the United States for the first time ever.
Nice.
That's according to the Federal Energy Information Administration. Wind energy edged out electricity generated by nuclear and coal in the nation's electricity mix, but still trailed behind natural gas.
I didn't even know we had a Federal Energy Information Administration.
And now you know.
For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we don't have a lot of time till Election Day, and look, I've been saying Joe Biden's got to do something to help alleviate costs, got to help struggling families make ends meet, got to do something to, help. And one of the areas that I think can be of help to struggling families and to struggling workers is doing something on student loan debt. There's been a little moratorium that's happened over the last, couple of years now because of the pandemic. And there's been a number of stories, and we've talked about it here on the program over the last couple of weeks, on how by not having to make these federal student loan payments, that a number of people, mostly millennials, have been able to get like a kind of a break from paying $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 a month into student loans. And the stories that they tell are, for the first time having savings accounts, for the first time being able to pay off their credit cards, for the first time being able to, pay their rent, having a credit score that isn't in the dumps, actually kind of turning their lives around. And they're kind of getting used to it. So the campaign pledge of maybe doing something on student debt, something maybe the president should do. Now, I have a lot of friends who are going, I should just wipe it all out. I have some people who are going, I should take $50,000. I'm not sure where the $50,000 came from. I had someone tell me that was his campaign pledge. I don't remember that. But here to share some thoughts on maybe what we should do and how it should go. I've asked Bradley Custer to come talk with us. Bradley is a senior policy analyst of higher education policy at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. Bradley, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. It's great to be here.
We've all seen the stories. We've all seen, the horror stories. Look, when I went to school, we had a little student loan debt, but I'm talking to some of these kids who were, 30, 40, 50. We knew one couple, $250,000 in student loan debt, and you go, how do you pay that back? It's a mortgage for the love of Pete. And you go, how do you start your life, let alone, families and all this other stuff, given the fact that you're so deep in debt and all you wanted to do is get an education? This isn't skin in the game. This is all your skin in the game.
Yeah, that's right. We truly have an affordability crisis in our college system. Instead of putting up public funding to higher education institutions so that college can be affordable, we have, over the past several decades, converted to a system where people who otherwise can't write a check to pay for their tuition and fees and housing and everything else, we make them take out loans and we saddle them with debt. And to make things even worse for them, we have a broken student loan system. And so for the people who do have loans, it's incredibly burdensome. And even the programs that we've created that are supposed to be safety nets don't work. So we really do have a problem.
Yeah, no. The union that represents the state system faculty members and university workers, APSCUF here, one of their past presidents told me years ago that here in this state, the state and the local governments used to pick up about 2/3 of the cost of an education for people in this state who are my age when we were going to school back years ago. Right now, that number is completely flipped on its head, and the student picks up about 3/4 of the cost, where the state picks up about a quarter. So for people my age and older are going, well, I took out student loans. No, it's not the same kind of situation. We've completely screwed a generation. So something has to be done. But you go, how do you go about doing this? I don't see a way forward where without fixing the system that you can go, okay, we're going to pick you guys right now. We're going to wipe everything out. You're the winners, but we're going to screw the next generation. Walk me through what you see as a path forward and what you think the president should do in helping folks get through this moment.
You're absolutely right that there are two sides of this problem. The first is that we have to fix affordability on the front side. That means when someone gets their tuition bill, if they cannot already afford to write that check, we need to make sure that that number is affordable so that people don't have to take out loans and be in debt to pay for college. I believe everyone in this country should be able to get an affordable, high quality education without going into debt. And then on the other side, if we do still have a system where some loan program is necessary, we have to fix the system. We have a very complicated system where we have companies that the Department of Education contracts with to manage the loans. They have a terrible track record of helping borrowers through repayment. And we have a number of programs that promise some type of forgiveness if they make payments over a period of time, 10 to 20 to 25 years. But we know from recent investigations that those programs are terribly broken too. People are paying on their loans for over 20 years and they're not getting the forgiveness that they deserve. So, there are lots of ideas to fix both sides of these problems. There are good ideas on how we can get more federal and state money going directly to institutions, just like we used to, just like the way you described. We have to get back to a place where instead of students paying out of pocket most of what a college takes in as revenue, that revenue needs to come from public sources. So we really need Congress and state governments to step up.
And we got to stop this idiotic race to the bottom stuff. Here in this state, there's some talk right now of selling off some dorm rooms at one of the state universities here that they built just 10 years ago. And the argument back then, and I remember the argument, we need to build these luxury condo kind of dorm rooms so that we can attract, this elite kind of student because it's this race. No, you need to put the best academic programs you can and make it affordable so people can go and get the best education they can, not all the bells and whistles and go deep into hock to do this. And I think a big part of this is that kind of, we need to have these big, these big auditoriums and all this wasted spending that's gotten us into some trouble, I think.
Yeah, that's certainly an argument that some worry about, that the cost of college is growing too much and colleges need to do something to rein that in. That may be true of some institutions, but the institutions that I think about the most are our public community colleges, our public four-year universities that are serving primarily low-income students, students of color. I'm not talking about the elite universities, private universities. These other types of institutions really need more public funding so that they can serve their communities by giving them the education and the training that they want to get a good paying job. We know from research that when students believe that their college will be affordable, they go. On the other hand, when students believe that they won't get enough financial aid or that college is too expensive, they simply don't go. And that is entirely our fault for creating a system where people are afraid of the cost of college.
No, and this is one of those things as a country, we can't, on the edge of technology. We used to push towards the edge of technology and push people to go as far as we were able to. And now it's become, we can't afford it. Sorry, we're broke. And we've created a system. And I go back to when I was in school. We were told the only way you were going to get into the middle class was to be able to go get a college degree. And then we made it so unaffordable for people that they go, well, I guess I'm not going to make it into the middle class because I can't afford to take on these massive loans. It was really a massive bait and switch. And I keep going back to, well, what happened to all of that money that we used to spend on education? Well, we know where it went. It went to creating the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. We gave it away to the rich and powerful. You want to talk about massive redistribution of wealth? We screwed the working class so that we could have a massive wealth class. And I say we undo the horrible that we did and go back and retax those folks. So that's my solution for the future. But right now, you've got a generation saddled with massive debt, and it's getting worse every day. And this moratorium is going to come to an end. So what should Joe Biden do? I've had a lot of people say that, we should forgive all of it, which I don't see practical or possible. And boy, you want to talk about, the kind of intergenerational envy and jealousy that would cause. Boy, that'd be horrible. But he can't do nothing. So where do you think the right policy would be?
We're in a very unique situation right now. Just last week, President Joe Biden extended the payment pause on federal student loans through the end of August 2022. And as you said earlier, we've been in this pandemic payment pause for over 2 years now. And the reason that he did that, he cited two reasons. First is that student borrowers still need help climbing out of the economic crisis that was caused by the pandemic that's still ongoing. We're still in a national emergency. But the second reason that he cited is that the Department of Education needs more time to fix our broken student loan system. And that's why my colleague, Marcella Bombardieri, and I wrote this week that while the payment pause extension through the end of August is helpful, and it's an important relief to especially low-income borrowers, that's simply not enough time for Congress and the Biden administration to fix all of the big problems with the system. And so we think we will need a longer payment pause, and a lot needs to happen before we tell 41 million student loan borrowers that it's time to start making payments on their loans again. So I can definitely talk about a couple of the areas that I think we need to fix.
Yeah. Listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Bradley Custer. Bradley's a senior policy analyst at the Center for American Progress, where he focuses on higher education policy. If you want to check out their website, americanprogress.org, we'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. So let's talk about that. Now, my idea is, because look, I talk to people my age who go, well, I took out student loans and I had to pay them back. They should have to pay them back. And I've said, look, okay, then if that's the goal, then I say the government buy up all the student loans. We make you pay it back at the money you borrowed at a no interest or 0.5%, whatever the cost of administering them. You paid your the skin in the game back, and we call it even. I see that as a way forward. I hear people getting so screwed over by the interest, the fees, the restarts. I know somebody who was telling me that, they by the time they started making payments, they stopped because of a job loss, some other stuff. By the time they were able to restart, everything they had paid was already gone, and it was like starting all over again. That's insane. So for me, that's one option. I'm curious your thoughts on where to go.
Interest is a great element of the student loan system that is truly absurd. People will pay for 10 or 20 years on their loans, and because the loan payments that they make are not big enough to cover interest, their balances actually grow. It's truly absurd. And so that's one of the places that could use a lot of fixing, and that's the program that we generally call income-driven repayment, or IDR. This is a program that's made up of actually 5 different programs. And the idea is that if your income is not high enough to make the monthly payment that you would normally make on a standard 10-year repayment plan, you should be able to get to pay a lower monthly amount. And if you make those lower monthly amounts over a period of 20 to 25 years, depending on the types of loans you have, at the end, you would get the rest of that forgiven. But because of things like interest capitalization and negative amortization, we see those loan balances grow. And we know from an NPR investigation that came out last week that the companies that the Department of Education contracts with to service these loans have done a terrible job of doing simple things like counting the number of payments that people have made over that course of 20 years. So we know that about 4.4 million student loan borrowers have been paying for over 20 years, and only 32 of them, as of last year, got the balance actually forgiven. That was the promise that Congress made when they created that program. And so I think step one is we have to absolutely, and this is something that both Congress and the Department of Education need to work on, they need to simplify and improve the income-driven repayment plan before 41 million borrowers start paying again, because otherwise those borrowers are back in the same position that they were in before, and that's deeply unfair.
Well, it sounds to me the number one thing we need to do is get this out of the hands of the profiteers and reclaim it into the public space, because you're never going to get profiteers, people who have a profit motive, their income. At first thought, you're never going to get them to do what we want them to do when their motive is, hey, how do we keep these people on the hook so we can keep cashing in? I don't know how you keep them around. So for me, the first move is reclaim in public space these programs and bring it in-house and have this be a public kind of program.
I wish that were an option. I think the Department of Education would say it's not possible to manage the loans of 41 people. And again, like I said earlier, that is our fault. We could have a smaller student loan system if we made college more affordable to more people. But that is the other area where there need to be serious reforms, the servicing system. The other thing that created a lot of chaos last year during this pandemic is that 3 of the major student loan servicing companies decided that they didn't want to service federal loans anymore. And so over the past few months, they've been moving millions of borrowers to brand new servicing companies. And that's a huge disruption for borrowers. That process is still ongoing. And that's another reason why, payments were supposed to turn on in a couple of weeks here. And that's why Biden extended it, because there are still people who are mid-transfer moving to an entirely new student loan company.
Last question I've got for you. What should the president do between now and then? Is there something he can do? What do you expect him to do? What should we be watching out for?
The Department of Education is going to continue to do what it can under its current authority to fix programs like income-driven repayment. They're going to try to clean up the student loan servicing system, and they are operating a really big improvement to the public service loan forgiveness program. The other thing is that, it's fair to say that President Biden on the campaign trail promised voters $10,000 in student debt cancellation. And for other certain types of borrowers that went to certain colleges, he promised even more cancellation. And so I think we are owed, follow up on that promise. The administration has been tight-lipped on what it's going to do on cancellation, but they haven't told us it's not possible yet. So we'll be watching for that too.
Can he do that individually? Can he do that through executive order? Can he do that without Congress?
That's the big question. There are different opinions on that, and the opinion that truly matters is the lawyers in the Department of Education. A year ago, the president directed his education secretary to explore that question, and they created a memo where they described the president's authority to do this. We know that it exists because there's a redacted version of it, but we haven't seen the memo. So we're waiting to see what the Department of Education thinks it can do on cancellation.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, and we'd love to have you come back as more comes out on this and discuss this a little bit further. It's an important topic, and I hope something happens soon, because I got kids who are going to be going to college soon. We better figure this out and quick.
That's right.
Bradley, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Bradley Custer. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. We'll get links out of social media how you can check out the stuff that they do. Bradley is the senior policy analyst of higher education policy there at the Center for American Progress. We'll take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The reality is something has to be done on the education front. It really isn't. It's a crime what we've done to the last couple of generations of students. The millennials have really gotten shortchanged. My generation, we were the first ones that really got hammered with big student loans, and even then they weren't completely outrageous. Like I said, I remember the year that the governor here, Tom Corbett, it was back in, he was elected in 2010, and there was a big rally. I think it was middle of 11. There was a big rally on the Capitol steps, and the education unions had students from all over the state, and they had speakers come in, and I was getting ready to have my moment to get out and speak to the crowd, and I was standing there talking to a kid. He was a sophomore at one of the state system schools, and I was asking him, what are you doing here? And he's like, hey, I'm here to fight to make sure that they don't cut higher education funding by half, because that's what the governor was talking about at the time, cutting the state system's budget by half, which would have meant their tuition would have skyrocketed. And he said, I'm the first to go to college, and I'm going to be the first to complete college, and that's my goal. He said, my grandfather wanted to go to college, and he ended up having to go to off the war, and there was Korea, and it was all that stuff, and then he talked about his father wanted to go off to college, and then there was ended up mom got pregnant, and he came along, and all of this, and the punchline was grandpa wanted to go, didn't happen, got a job at the mill. Dad wanted to go, didn't happen, got a job at the mill. He said, I want to go. I've gone. I'm most of the way through. I have to finish because there's no mill. He goes, this is my only shot to getting into the middle class. I don't have the safety net that my grandfather and my father have. I can't, there's nothing for me to fall back on. So I have to fight for this. And this is what we've created in this country. So he had to take out this massive debt, because he was sold on this idea that this is all you got, kid. There's nothing left. You got to put yourself deep in, got to believe in yourself, skin in the game. This is what we did to that generation. And I'll bet you that kid graduated, at least I hope he did, with at least $25,000, possibly $30,000 in debt. And you go, well, that's not a lot. Yes, that is a lot. When you're 22 years old, it's insane. For a state system school, especially when you think back to, I know a friend of mine went all the way through the University of Michigan, all the way through undergraduate, all the way through law school, and worked a minimum wage waitress job. Lived in a crummy apartment, drove a jalopy of a car, paid her tuition out of her pocket, and did not have a dime of student debt in the late 60s. So sometime between the late 60s and the 1980s, when I was going to school, and 2010, we had a massive redistribution of wealth, from when you could pay for it on a minimum wage job to you've got to go more than $25,000 or $30,000 in debt. It's crazy, completely crazy. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, get the podcast. It's always there for your entertainment, your enjoyment. Quick break, right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1930. That was the day that 114 agricultural laborers in California's Imperial Valley paid a harsh price for joining together to try and improve their working conditions. The Great Depression was worsening the already difficult conditions faced by California farm laborers. The workers had gathered at a hall in El Centro, a city in the valley. The meeting was called together by the Cannery and Agricultural Workers Industrial Union. The union often faced great opposition because some of its leaders had communist ties. The meeting in Imperial Valley included many Filipino and Mexican workers, along with white and black laborers. One by one, the workers stood up and told their stories of harsh labor performed under the unforgiving California sun. Suddenly, the door of the hall burst open. In poured armed sheriff's deputies and gun-toting thugs hired by the growers. At their head was Sheriff Gillette. Every single worker at the meeting was arrested. They were chained together, loaded into the back of trucks, and transported to the county jail. There, they were charged with violating the Criminal Syndicalism Act. During the first Red Scare of the 20th century, California was one of 20 states to enact laws criminalizing syndicalism. 9 stood trial in front of Superior Court Judge Von Thompson. 3 Mexican workers were ordered deported. The remaining 6 were convicted and sentenced to between 2 and 42 years in prison. They were ordered to serve hard time either at Folsom State Prison or San Quentin. Judge Thompson declared that for communists, anything less than a life sentence was lenient. In 1933, the final 2 prisoners were released from prison. Organizing California farm workers was a long and difficult campaign that faced great opposition.
The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. And right there's the problem with the big money establishment that now controls the National Democratic Party. This group certainly wants Democrats to be the majority party, but for what purpose? Based on the policies they actually push, they seek progress without change, only offering policy tweaks that conform to the existing corporate structure. Their idea of change is what near beer is to beer, only not so satisfying. Worse, when grassroots progressives put real FDR-style Big D Democratic ideas on the national agenda, the Dem hierarchy turns into a bunch of fraidy-cat Democrats, muling that a living wage law, health care for all, breaking up monopoly power, child care, strengthening unions, and other fundamental changes are too extreme. Such boldness, they cry, will frighten voters. They are, of course, wrong and politically inept. For such direct benefit, we're on your side changes in today's corporate-run system are the Democrats' most popular proposals. Polls confirm that this is especially true among working-class voters in manufacturing towns where Democrats have been getting creamed. Surveys by a group called American Family Voices show that these people don't think the party is too socialist or too woke, but too meek, too corporate, and missing in action. After all, they've seen CEOs move their decent-paying jobs out. They've watched monopolies and Wall Street squeeze the lifeblood out of family farm opportunities. They've witnessed Amazon and Walmart eating Main Street alive. Where, they ask, is the Democratic Party that once stood for us? These people actually despise big corporations, love unions, and yearn for a party that'll join them in battling the bastards. This is Jim Hightower saying, the question they have for Democrats is basic. Do you just intend to hold office or use it?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the more of the insanity you see. Like yesterday, we talked about the evidently there are the Q folks who believe that in the vaccine was the snake venom, and in the snake venom, I guess the Satan DNA. And again, I've asked, and a couple people have emailed me, and they're looking for the origin. Where did Satan's DNA come from? And people said, duh, Rick, Satan, hello. And I'm going, yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. But how did you actually get the DNA? Did someone actually meet up with Satan on a street corner? Did it come in a vial? Inquiring minds clearly want to know at this. If we're going down this Satan rabbit hole, I want to know the actual transfer of Satan's DNA. I mean, come on. Can you believe that we're actually talking about that? But here we are. Welcome to America. Oh my gosh. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on just how bizarre and how crazy things have gotten. I've asked Tim Hogan to come talk with us. Tim is the executive editor over at our Heartland Signal, our good friends on WCPT AM 820, one of our radio affiliates in Chicago, heartlandsignal.com, their website. Tim, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be here, Rick.
So do you have the Satan DNA in the blood, or did you just get the snake venom kind? Which did you get?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if there's a difference there between Pfizer and Moderna and which is which, but I'm going to have to watch the documentary.
Yeah, I'm now curious because I want to know, I now got to know, I got to know if there was a transfer and if there's a mark of the beast, because I watched the Omen movies back in the 70s. There was the mark of the beast. I've read the book, in the back, that Revelations part, the sixes. Well, when they gave the shot with the is there now the sixes? I now got to know.
Who knows? I mean, sometimes I do think monitoring conservative media, fringe media, that at some point they're going to run out of novel ways to make wildly crazy arguments. And, it's been a while since I said that to myself, and they're still coming up with new stuff. So.
No, and the thing is this is the part where I go, how are Democrats losing to this? How is it that people are going, you're lunatic? How are we not going, you're all lunatics? We need more. How is it that there isn't someone standing on the floor of the House going, hello? Have you seen Marjorie Taylor Greene? We need mental health funding, large amounts of it. Have you seen these Q people? We need large amounts of mental health funding. But here's the scary part, and you guys have been doing some incredible reporting on this stuff. This stuff is kind of the cover for all the really heinous stuff. While we're joking about Satan's DNA and mocking these people, across state houses across this country, some really ugly, hateful legislation going on in places like Missouri and Tennessee, Michigan, all across this country. You've got angry, ugly, hateful, anti-LGBT stuff, the abortion stuff. I mean, just some really hateful stuff.
Yeah, it is a huge problem. And to your point, what is very frustrating sometimes about how these elections swing is, we are up against historical trends, right? We are up against the theory of thermostatic public opinion, which just is sometimes the public looks at the party in power, who controls Congress, who controls the White House, and says, I want to adjust it a little bit. And sometimes that adjustment, is for a party that houses all of the people that you just mentioned. And it absolutely is cover for some really, really terrible policies that are moving through the states, and it's happening in a lot of different places. Of course, people paid attention to what Ron DeSantis was doing in Florida with the Don't Say Gay legislation. But now we're seeing conservatives, particularly in these gubernatorial races, tacking even further to the right on this and saying, for example, James Craig, who's the front runner in Michigan, that he would have a more aggressive law, that it shouldn't just be K through 3, it should be through further grades. And you have folks on the floor of state legislatures across the country. It's like we see this every single day. We review what those schedules look like in the morning of what legislation is being proposed. Every day there is a piece of anti-trans legislation that's moving through these state legislatures. Today we had Representative Ian Mackey in Missouri questioning one of his Republican counterparts. He proposed anti-trans legislation. And, Mackey is gay. He talked about how he grew up in Hickory, Mississippi. a place where, he met the quote unquote nice people like the co-sponsor of this legislation, told him he was so smart, they would take him to baseball games. But at the same time, he would be deathly afraid to ever come out to those people because he knew that they would turn around and go vote for legislation that would disenfranchise him, that would oppress him. And he used as a vehicle for this story, which is incredibly powerful in this speech that he gave on the floor, that the sponsor's brother, as noted by the sponsor in a previous speech, told him at one point that he was afraid to come out to him. And Mackey's retort is, I would be too, knowing that you're spending your time focused on this, that this is what you are trying to push and craft as legislation. And so I think it's worth taking a step back, particularly with all of the anti-LGBTQ legislation. This is a fight that we had in the early 2000s. It's to try to make people seem different and to try to make others feel afraid of those people and to galvanize that for political support. It's just manipulation.
Yeah, and look, I think of the Matthew Shepard story, and you think of some of these folks, and you go, I think of that story and the fear that people must feel. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know much about that world. I know a couple of trans people who in my lifetime have transitioned, and as I've told them, I don't understand it. I'm probably never going to understand it. And to be honest, I'm grateful I don't know anything or understand it, but I wish you the best. I hope you find happiness. I hope this does it for you. God bless you. Follow your truth, follow your path. But I'm in this moment where, why does this matter to anyone else? I grew up in an era where we believed, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. I'm trying to figure out when the idea of don't worry about me, worry about yourself turned into I'm going to worry about me and everything that you do, even if it doesn't matter to me or to have anything to do with me. Whatever happened to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? Whatever happened to that? When did we turn into hooray for me and my rights, but screw you? I'm struggling with that.
Right. No, I mean, it's leave people alone. Isn't that a conservative principle? Leave people alone, let them live their lives. And the fact that the conservatives are weaponizing this, I mean, it's sick, right? For a long time, they took aim at the broader LGBTQ community. And, that movement has made so much progress in so many different areas. But now what they've done is sort of take a scalpel and now just focused on weaponizing legislation against the transgender community. And it is a vulnerable population. It is such a vulnerable population. And it is just inexcusable that they have become a target for, in particular, Republicans in these state legislatures. I mean, we saw on the floor of the Tennessee House the other day a anti-trans legislation proposal. One of the Democrats got up and asked the sponsor, have you consulted with any member of the transgender community on this legislation? Have you talked to anyone about it? No. And then asked, and do you know how many people are participating in sports in our state who are transgender? No. It is a solution, quote unquote, in search of a problem, and it's sick. It really is.
Well, what this is a political narrative that they're trying to spin. And look, I may have questions, I may have, my own thoughts that go along with this. But at the end of the day, I come back to everyone has the right to pursue life, liberty, their pursuit of happiness. They have the right to pursue their path unless it's infringing on mine. And look, what someone somewhere else is doing, leading their life, has nothing to do with me. I wish them the best. I may not agree with it, and I don't have to. And I think I wish more of us would think that way. Everything doesn't affect you. I went through this argument back in the late 90s, early 2000s when same-sex marriage was coming up. And I'll never forget the guy. The guy was going on about how same-sex couples are going to ruin the sanctity of his marriage, and how it was an abomination to the institution of marriage. And I'm going, but hold on. You've got a girlfriend and a child in Massachusetts. That isn't going to ruin the marriage that you have back in Pennsylvania? Am I missing something? Two people you don't know somehow going to screw that up, but the girlfriend and the kid in another state, that's perfectly fine. Oh, just weird to me. Weird to me, Tim.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That not a threat to that marriage. Got to worry about managing your own relationship.
I wish people would just mind their own damn business. Fix your own problems. That just my thought. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. It just doesn't get any simpler for me than that. We're here with Tim Hogan. Tim's the executive editor over at Heartland Signal, heartlandsignal.com, their website, if you want to check out the incredible work that they do following all the wackadoodles across the country doing the crazy stuff that they do. There are our radio partners over at WCPT AM 820. Thank you for the good folks listening there in Chicago and folks listening across the country. Now, here's the other thing that's getting me. The Republicans have always been the party of purity, the ones who tell us how pious they are. And I kind of get the anti-gay thing. They were never this kind of obscene, this kind of, shoving their beliefs down our throats until, these last, 30 years. I never would have ever thought that they would have been the party of Putin and Russia. How did they go from Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall to the party of, Putin's a smart, genius guy, savvy. He's, he's a good guy. I'm standing with Putin. I don't know how we got, I don't know. I don't know how the party of Red Dawn, back in the 80s has turned into, I just wish Putin would hurry up and kill those pedophiles in Ukraine and get the neo-Nazis and the Nazis so this can all be over. I don't know.
I mean, I think that Donald Trump is responsible for a big piece of that tectonic shift in the Republican Party. And he's moved individual members of that caucus. He's moved constituents. I think you look at broad-based polling, there is not an appetite for a large appetite for, pro-Russian position from Republican voters. But at the same time, some of these elected officials are absolutely out there. I mean, you had Donald Trump the other night on Fox News still railing against NATO. Like, what a time to rail against NATO. That was his whole thing, right? They're not paying enough. They're not paying enough. He's added a little bit of a riff where he's saying, like, no, I reformed NATO. Now it's great. Trying to take advantage. But it's not just him. It is people like former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who has been warned, if you look at what he has said, calling Putin a very capable leader, that someone who should be respected. That is language that he's used that's been picked up by Russian state media. And that hasn't stopped him from repeating it. He said it to a New Hampshire TV outlet, I think WMUR, just a couple days ago. And it's also not just elected officials. It is some of the constituency. So if you look at Chuck Grassley had a town hall a couple days ago, Iowa Starting Line, an outlet covered this Burlington town hall. And one of the people who attended said exactly what you just said, Rick, which is, look, what I've heard about Ukraine is that there are biolabs there and we need to denazify part of the country and that there are a lot of pedophiles in Ukraine. And Chuck Grassley timidly, I want to underscore, timidly pushed back, saying, well, I don't know if there's anything special about the pedophiles in Ukraine, but, it's a problem everywhere. So I suppose there's some of that. I mean, come on, that you are at a moment there when you're supposed to push back and take a stand and say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. And wherever you're getting your information from is wrong too. But it has been wild to watch the party go through that transformation.
Yeah. Look, Grassley's like he's old as dirt. So, I kind of a little bit give him a pass on not vigorously pushing back, but at least no, not even close. You fail here. That movie, Billy Madison, the guy goes, we're now all dumber for having listened to you. We should pull that guy out. Because not only were we going after the pedophiles, we're getting Nazis and neo-Nazis. Huh? We're going to get them both. We got both kinds, Nazis and neo-Nazis.
Yeah, it is. The drift of the party to be complacent, and look, it's also people like you've talked about. You bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said that Ukraine essentially poked the bear and caused the Russian invasion. You have people like Representative Madison Cawthorn who have said that President Zelensky is a thug. It's a fringe of the party, but it is part of the party, and it's not nothing.
No, and here's the scary part, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. I have said that I fear after 2022, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if Cawthorn makes it, I'm not sure he will, but if he makes it through, Boebert, Gomert, Gosar, the 63 that voted against NATO and against Ukraine, they're going to seem normal by comparison with the wackadoodles and cuckooks and all of the fringe characters that are running for office now. Because it seems the party is marching far off, the cliff into the abyss of insanity. And I fear that, what we view now as off the beaten path, going to seem like the good old days. Because someone reminded me, I used to mock Michelle Bachmann for being crazy. She was good crazy, though. She was fun crazy. This isn't fun crazy anymore, Tim.
Well, I think that you're right in the sense that the party's getting dragged to the extreme. And look, we haven't even talked about Sarah Palin running for Congress, but maybe you can add to those ranks. And even something as recent as looking at the confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. I mean, what Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz tried to mainline as their criticism in that confirmation hearing was to give lip service to QAnon theories that we would consider wildly out of the mainstream. So there is a real threat there that the party continues to get radicalized.
Yeah, it's crazy. Last one I've got for you, Ohio's. The Senate race there has been fun. Rich guy lecturing the middle class that they don't pay enough taxes and that rich people pay all the taxes, considering rich people have all the money. Duh. Read the room. I guess you missed that whole 2010 thing where the middle class was screaming, hey, we're taxed enough already. Guess you missed the memo on that, rich guy. But evidently Donald Trump has weighed in. Which way did the Donald swing?
Well, it sounds like according to NBC, their reporting is he is likely going to weigh in favor of J.D. Vance, which is wild because the person who has spent the most time in that race bashing Donald Trump is J.D. Vance. So I guess those sins are forgiven by the Donald this time. But we also saw that coordinated by Jane Timken and Josh Mandel, there's a letter from Ohio County Party chairs now begging Donald Trump just not to endorse in the race. So they are going to, take neutrality as a win here. But look, Trump has a rally coming up in Ohio very soon for a member of Congress that he's supporting. But I would not be surprised if at that point in time they make the announcement of who he's supporting for Senate.
Well, let the fun begin. And the insanity. I know Trump has endorsed here in our state of Pennsylvania, Dr. Oz. Hey, another reality star that lives out of state that morally bankrupt and all of that. So, hey, let the fun of 2022 continue. But Tim, I appreciate the time and the work that you guys do over there at Heartland Signal. Hope folks will check out the website, heartlandsignal.com. We'll get links out on social media. Tim Hogan, appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Tim Hogan. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us and have missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available, always ready to go. Just go to thericksmithshow.com and down it, or wherever you get your podcast, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Right back after this. think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Yes, I'm still hung up on the snake blood. And I got like 5 emails of people going, Rick, I can't believe you didn't know that Satan's DNA came from Satan. And yes, if you want to remind me that Satan's DNA comes from Satan, you too can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I did answer all of them. With the, gee, I didn't know that. But seriously, I want to know how they got it. Did UPS deliver it? Did it just drop out of the sky? Was it airlifted? Was it an immaculate kind of reception kind of thing? Yeah. Interesting day today with the emails though. Lots of fundraising stuff from right wingers. Lots of Trump emails saying, "Hey, give us money so we can go waste it on crazy people." But a lot of Democrats not happy. A lot of our listeners not thrilled with me yesterday. And I'm not going to apologize because, look, skewer me if you must. I said yesterday that I thought, given right now, looking at the tea leaves in front of me, looking at the crystal ball that isn't crystal, that isn't actually a ball, I think the Democrats are gonna take a beating. You look at inflation. If we don't do anything to get that under control, you don't have anything else to run on in the coming weeks and months. You don't do much more on messaging. You don't get out there and start fighting the good fight. If it's right now, you're going to take a massive beating. The president's approval ratings are in the tank. I just saw 33%. Not great. Not great. And look, if you're angry at me, maybe here's a thought. Be angry at the Democrats who aren't doing the things that need to get done. Because Democrats shouldn't be losing in this moment. Because, as we've been pointing out, the Republicans are off their flipping rockers. They're literally running people who believe that Satan's blood is Satan's DNA is in the snake blood that's in the vaccine. And nobody questioned whether there was snake blood in the vaccine. This is the kind of crazy we're running against. And understand, Republicans, listen to me when I ask you this. What happened? You used to believe in smaller, less intrusive government. You used to believe in mind your own damn business. Look, I don't understand a lot of this stuff that people do, and I don't care to. That's their lives. People want to lead their lives, let them lead their lives. That's simple. Doesn't mean anything, doesn't matter to me. Don't care. And neither should you. It's crazy the things, and again, they make up the most extreme things. There's the one story where, what they're making kids who, the kids are saying that they identify as animals and they're making them go in litter boxes. That never happened. So literally, they're making stuff up. And they're making stuff up to enrage us. They're making stuff up to anger us. They're making stuff up to divide us. They're making stuff up, to fit their narrative. And Democrats, we've got to be active, engaged. You want to prove me wrong? I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to be angry. I want you to be active. I want you to be engaged. I want you to get out and vote. I want you to get your neighbors to vote. I want you to get out there and say, no, Joe Biden's not a horrible president. He's done some good things. He whipped the vaccines behind. He got the vaccine out. He whipped the viruses behind. He got us back to open. And Democrats, please get out there as we're building stuff and take credit for it and smack down those people who are saying, no, look at what we did, even though we didn't vote for it. take it by the... Get out there and do something. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed any of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast. Make sure you grab the podcast. We'll be back next time. See you back here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.